Hello everyone, I'm Brian and welcome back to part 2. Alright, here we go.
I agree with you, and Misio is right that whatever's happening to us, it was already made up long time ago. So we created robots. We first thought about robots, Android robots. They've become a reality. I know people who are designing such robots, engineering such robots, and they told me that in 30, 50 years from now, they'll be performing all functions better than human beings. Not only, repetitive functions, they will be better at drawing up paintings, writing music. So the things which human beings believed were the realm of human intelligence or human soul, no, they're saying that robots will be better all these occupations. What would happen to human beings in that case? What would be well, the most important thing is that to prevent robots from making wilder fantasies than human beings. They will start making wilder fantasies. Well, in that case, they will become people. In Japan, they have toys or puppets. They become human partners. So, but those toys, they don't have imagination. Well,
Mhm.
now they don't have imagination, but I think by 2100 they will have some imaginative powers.
I don't know about that. I guess we're kind of, in a sense, the same. I guess eventually they will, I suppose. Because, much like, I was going to say, robots are limited to the knowledge that they know, but then at the same time, so are we. So, I guess I cannot argue against that. Eventually, robots will be able to think outside of the box, like we will. Right now, a robot can only think about the things that it knows, and nothing else. It cannot create things from the things it knows, necessarily yet. But eventually, based on what it knows, it can create something. And also, once it's able to learn, it can then create things from the things that it recently knows to the things that it already knows to create something new that it didn't know in the first place, but it's an amalgamation of a couple ideas. Hmm.
It will be a completely different dialogue. Imagine two toys, two puppets with imagination capabilities meeting. Imagine their conversation. So I think those will win who can create something new, who can imagine something new. And in answer to my colleague Plato, I would like to bring up Plato's ideas. His Adas, the quantification of ideas. So those people who will be creating ideas, those will be creating robots, partners. No matter it's whether it's bioengineering or some other physics. Well, as creators of robots, we think that we will always be controlling, will be in control. You know, because who knows that one day those robots will wake up and say, "Why do we need you, people?" So I think the ones who make, who imagine, who make them will control them. Dmitry,
iRobot.
are you sure that we'll be able to imagine something? It's not a fact for me that we're imagining something. I think everything has already been imagined before. We're just relaying whatever was imagined. Well, let's again substitute the word imagining with the word studying others' imaginations or imaginary images. It would still require investments. I'm not talking about financial investments. I'm talking about total investments. So at some point in time, the humanity would reach the
Pinnacle?
bifurcation
Oh.
point when it would have a chance to come up with something of its own. Well, there is a concept, and I think our dear colleagues are aware of that. Akasha Chronicles. And in those Akasha Chronicles, everything we think we came up with, it was already written, it was already created. So everything we can think of has already been created. And I think our technological development paradigm is is akin to reading those imaginations and studying them. Well, if robots will replace humans, Some people say it will be paradise, we'll have tons of spare time, we'll be self-improving, robots will be doing everything for us. Well, the Americans believe that it would lead to degradation of humans because they would lose the sight, they would lose the targets, the objectives for further improvement.
Well, it all depends on how the robots. We're either going to have the Matrix, where the robots isolate themselves away from us. We're going to have Terminator, where the robot sees us as a threat and destroys us, or I was going to say Wally, but I am not too sure on that one. Because again, I've never really seen the movie. I don't know of another movie where robots and humans are cooperating. Artificial AI, artificial intelligence. That movie, maybe? I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen that movie. But I mean, you got to look at also relationships with robots because I have a feeling, the SEX industry has been always been something that's been throughout the entirety of human history. And with people, well, at least in terms of, again, in the United States, in terms of how relationships was going, it's getting pretty terrible. Divorce rates increasing. People are unhappy with relationships. I think even I do believe I even hear in Japan that there are some women or men out there that they say that, oh, I just want to hire, they hire people to be in relationship with because it's just much easier. And because they don't want to put up with something in a relationship, so it's just much easier to hire someone to do it, and they get all the happiness from hiring that person. It's really strange, just because it's not something that's normal as of yet. But then eventually we're going to just have where humans are no longer reproducing because there's going to be these robots who can do everything that this human being wants, and there's no procreation at that point. I have a feeling everyone's going to be a test tube baby at that point, I guess. Either that or we're just going to go extinct, but at least not in extinct in the way that we were killed, just we no longer reproduced.
Well, it's a question of whether humans would be able to imagine or create new space for itself. What my colleagues were talking about, basically the main idea is whether new ideas, they would create new ideas. Dmitry was talking about 600 years. And if somebody lives for 600 years, people would have to come up with something for 500 years because they will become tired. Now, would people live for 75 years? Imagine they would need to fill their 500 years more. So 6 times more ideas, 6 times more content for life. The more time we have on our hands, a person who works at a plant 16 hours, as was at the end of 19th century, 16 hours a day, he had 1 hour of his personal time. The modern day man has, works for 8 hours, so he has more time, more personal time. So we're talking about life in perceptions, life felt. So
Sorry, I wanted to get to this before we switch subject. This is what I was talking about in the last video, where people just can't be happy being alive. They need something to do, or they're gonna go crazy. And but yeah, like you were saying now, like about living 500 years. Now he needs 500 years of entertainment or something to do. Otherwise, he's gonna get tired and bored. Whereas, like Sadhguru was talking about, like he enjoys life. He doesn't need any other entertainment. He's just in bliss constantly. So that's going to be the thing that needs to happen because 500 years is a long time of just being bored.
these abilities have increased twofold. Now we know people who are having very varied life, and they're not engaged in mechanical labor. They're not degrading, and that gives them twice as much time compared to those people who spend 8 hours every day doing some mechanical things. So, and they're spending more time to make their lives more interesting and to make lives of people around more interesting. I think that's the for the first time, humanity finds itself in a situation when it has a lot of spare time, and people can compete for their spare time, and now people can come up with all different ideas on how to fill up that spare time. And those people who can succeed in doing that, they will pass this route physically, chemically. And other people who are not in a position to do that, who fail to do that, they will end up flipping burgers for the rest of their life. Thank you, Dmitry. I'm going to ask what's going to happen to TV, but Mr. Kako has a statement. Or
Really quick. Really quick, I think that the tipping point as to when robots become dangerous is when they have self-awareness, perhaps by the end of the century. Right now, our most advanced robots have the intelligence of a cockroach, a retarded cockroach, a lobotomized retarded cockroach. But eventually, our robots will become as smart as a mouse, then as smart as a rat, then a rabbit.
No, I think differently. I have a feeling that a robot will, the second that they can, they'll be instantaneously smart just because of the unlimited knowledge on the internet that it could obtain. But that is, of course, if it has access to that. It'll be as smart as the amount of information it can gather and retain. So it's not going to be in stages unless they only allow it a small amount of intelligence, and then it can proceed by stages. But the second that the robot has access to all the information on the internet, a lot of memes, but and a lot of TikToks, I guess. I don't know, whatever that happens to be the fancy, the Facebooks and the MySpaces. But the second it gains knowledge of all of that, and the more it can retain of that, it's limited by the storage that it has, the capacity it has. I'm sure it'll be as smart as, again, it'll be as smart as the limitation that it's got.
Then a dog and a cat, and by the end of the century, perhaps as smart as a monkey. At that point, they are potentially dangerous. Monkeys know they are monkeys. Monkeys know they are not human. Now, dogs are confused. Dogs don't know that we are not a dog. Dogs think that we are a dog, and therefore they obey us. We're the top dog, they're the underdog. So I think at that point, 100 years from now, at the end of the century, we should put a chip in their brain to shut them off if they have murderous thoughts. That is a fail-safe mechanism. But that's only temporary, because then what happens when robots become so smart, they remove the fail-safe system.
Or disable it and not remove it.
That is also possible in the next century, the 22nd century. At that point, I think we should merge with them. I don't think this will happen in this century, but I think in the next century, we should merge with our creation. Why not become Homo superior? Why not use exoskeletons, which are now being created, to become Hercules? That is the power of the gods. So in other words, one option, instead of fighting off the robots in the next century, is to merge with them.
I was thinking, it's like, why? Like, I mean, he says potential to be dangerous. Yes, and again, any tool has a potential to be dangerous. Any creation has a potential to be dangerous. I guess I'm just hoping he's thinking along the lines of the worst case scenario, because very well we could create a robot and it ends up knowing, it's like, oh, we are compassionate being. The robot understands that there are good and bad people in the world, and understand laws and why we do things. That way it knows to protect the good and punish the bad in a sense, or knows not to punish the bad because there's people out there who has those authorities, like cops and whatnot. So that's, of course, in the good side of things. The bad side is whenever it just decides it wants to kill us all. Terminator 2 or 1.
To become superhuman.
Будут ли у нас
Well, we have a choice whether to fight or to merge with them.
Yes.
I personally think we will have a choice because there's plenty of time. We realize that this is not going to happen anytime soon. Our robots are as smart as bugs right now, and we have many decades before we have to worry about this. If you put a bug in the forest, A bug immediately knows where to find food, how to hide, how to find mates, how to find shelter. A bug can do this. You put our most advanced robots in the forest, and what do?
Sit
They
there,
get
do nothing.
lost. They fall over. That's how primitive we are with robots. So we have many decades to plan for the time when robots become self-aware, and beyond that, whether or not we should merge with them. Now, some people think that the idea of merging with robots is repulsive, because it means that we're going to be a brain inside a vat of liquid. No, I don't think so. I think that we will want to preserve our basic shape, we'll want to preserve who we are, but we'll have, in addition to that, exoskeletons giving us super memory and superpowers when we feel like. But we will look pretty much the same as we do now.
Скажите, пожалуйста,
Correct me if I'm wrong, but so if we decide not to merge with robots, I want to ask you the same question as to Dmitry. Will robots develop themselves? And their intellect will develop, and at one point they will say, we no longer need you, human beings.
And also the fact that they can produce themselves, because they just need to put, you know, a body together, exoskeleton. Well, not an exoskeleton, but it could be an exoskeleton. But they make the body, the chip, the brain, and download. It becomes like Ultron, basically, where all maybe they become a hive mind, like the Borg, and they all think there's the hive mind that, you know, they're all connected through the internet or whatever, and then they can just mass produce themselves. And they can mass produce the humans, because it takes us 18 years at the very minimum, or 14 years I suppose, if you absolutely have to make a fighting person, capable fighting person. And the robots can probably, if they create a factory, can pop out 10 or 12 or 100 a day. It all depends.
Well, there is something called the singularity, the point at which robots can create robots of higher intelligence. We are far from the singularity today. But one day it could happen that robots will have babies, and these babies are smarter than the parents, and this process can rise exponentially fast. So rather than fight this, I think we should begin the process of perhaps merging with this technology and enhancing ourselves rather than fighting off what could be inevitable. Now, this is not going to happen, I don't think, in this century, but I think our descendants will have the democratic debate as to how far to merge with our technologies or become
Individuals.
extinct.
Oh yeah, there you go. Or individuals to make that choice whether they want to merge or not. They're not merging doesn't necessarily mean you're opposed to it. You know, let's just say, like, you know, just whether you want to merge or not, I guess.
спасибо большое. Гуру.
Oh,
Thank you so much,
about time.
Sadhguru. All the hopes are with you. We're talking about technological breakthroughs, which at some point, maybe not today, not tomorrow, will happen. But we are already moving very fast. Previously, technology breakthroughs would happen every generation, but now they happen every day. First of all, can a human brain cope with such a speed of changes? Or people would just go crazy with that?
Good afternoon, everyone. There are two dimensions to this, which I think we're not differentiating here. One is intellect, another is intelligence. Intellect can only function when there is an accumulated memory. Why a child in the village looks a little dumb compared to a city slick boy is simply because he has more memory and information. But if you leave them in real-life situations, the rural boy may come out much smarter, where a certain intelligence is needed, where information is not needed. So essentially, human intellect functions from memory. And everything that we are considering or labeling as technology is essentially memory-based. Our imagination is memory-based. Memory means recorded past, something that we already know. How we can extrapolate into a different format.
I think I said it earlier.
Essentially the same thing, finding expressions in permutations and combinations, but nothing new happening. Nothing new can happen from that. It looks new because it's a new presentation. It's a new format. Well, in terms of day-to-day life, it's absolutely new, of course. So technologically, whatever we do will lead us to a space where right now human societies have invested heavily. This I must blame it on the European default because pre-Renaissance, when these societies were hugely restricted by dogmatic religious belief systems, when a few people broke through, that is, they decided to think for themselves, they refused to go by the book or the clergy, and they wanted to think for themselves, and when they thought for themselves, the amount of freedom that it gave them, they thought this is liberation. Because of this, from worshipping God to worshipping human thought became the mode. Since then, we call this scientific development. But essentially, human beings have started worshipping their own thought. What I think is more important than my very existence. Because of this, every capability that we get, we have been using it against ourselves and every other life simply because our thought is again a manifestation of the memory that we carry. If you allow me a few minutes, we, in the Eastern cultures, in yogic culture, we look at human mind as 16 parts. These 16 parts can be categorized as 4 basic segments. It's called buddhi, I'm using the Indian terminology, I'll come to English. Buddhi, ahankara, manas and chitta. What this means is, buddhi means the intellect. Intellect, if we have to use an analogy, it is a knife. All of you, I'm sure, you would prefer to have a sharp intellect rather than a dull one. Yes? Hello? You must choose, I'm going to bless you. Sharp intellect or a dull one? Sharp. So essentially, it is a cutting instrument. So we have a knife in our hand which gave us a certain access to knowledge because we could dissect whatever we want. This is the nature of human intellect. Whatever it is given to it, it will dissect and look at it. Everything is dissected, including human nature. But by dissection, you will know certain things. If I dissect you, I will know where your heart is located, where your liver, kidney and spleen is located and what's its condition. But I will not know you by any sense. When I say you, I am not talking about your thoughts, your emotions, your ideologies. That also can be known by dissection. We call this psychoanalysis. That's also dissection. But you will not know the nature of this life by dissection. There is no way to know that. So you're using a knife to stitch. You will leave life in tatters. So knife is useful for cutting. So this knife of intellect is a powerful instrument of survival, not an instrument to know something that is beyond your present level of perception. By dissection, you know certain things, but it is not beyond your present dimension of perception. Because this knife is useless without the bank of memory that you already have. What connects you to this bank of memory, which we call as manas, which is a silo of memory, is a dimension called ahankara, which literally means identity. This is where misuse of technology is happening because of our identities. The moment you identify yourself with something…
I will say, I've heard this story a few times from Sadhguru, and I mean, it is a good starting point for a lot of people who has not heard him speak before or are new to these ideas. But I still like hearing them because, again, as I learn more about it, I end up picking up on a lot of things.
Your intellect will ceaselessly work towards protecting that identity, either with our species or with our gender or with our nationality or race, religion, caste, creed, 1,000 other ways. Whatever is the nature of your identity, that is how your intellect will function. That is one care we have not taken in our education systems, in raising of our children. What is the identity? Because we need small identities to fight other people. We have been engaged with this forever. Anyway, leaving that aside, the manas is a silo of memory. This one thing I will subdivide for your understanding. We identify 8 different types of memories in the manas. This is called elemental memory, atomic memory, evolutionary memory, karmic memory, articulate memory, inarticulate memory, and conscious and unconscious levels of memory. When I say memory, we are not thinking about just what's in your head. Right now, there is more memory in every DNA that you carry or every cell in your body than your entire brain can carry. Because you may not remember how 10 generations ago your great-great-great-grandfather looked like, but his nose is sitting on your face right now. Your body remembers. Your body remembers 1,000,000 years ago how your forefathers looked, even the skin tone, it is not forgotten. So the amount of memory that the body carries is phenomenal. Memory is not just that dimension of memory that you can consciously access. There is memory. Memory is the thing which decides who you are right now. It is from this context you're talking about robots becoming just like you because you understand, after all, if you build substantial memory, they'll just become like you and me. Those of you who are thinking of a robotic partner in your life, a robotic wife or husband, it's a good idea because all the time the complaint in this relationship is your partner is not the way you want them to be.
I think I talked about this in the last video, but yeah, people are just giving up on relationship because they don't… or is it this last video or this video? Excuse me, sorry. But yeah, people are just not wanting to deal with relationships. They don't want to put in the work. And with technologies that we have, like cell phones and those dating apps and stuff, you can just go on to the next person, and then the next person, and then the next person, until you find one or don't find one. Actually, you'll end up just because, I like 10 things, but they forgot to check the 11th box. Moving on to the next one. Well, this person checked 5, but they're still missing 6. So the next one. Everyone's trying to find the perfect person that meets all the requirements, but to find that perfect person is very, very difficult. Instead of trying to work out the sum of the issues that they have with an individual, they're not willing to put in the work because it's just much easier to go to the next person. Instead of having to put in the work, just move on to the next person.
So you can manufacture them the way you want. You want them mild when you want them mild, you want them wild when you want them wild, you want them to be turned off when you want them to be turned off. This is a great idea. Yes. And it may become a reality. If not very soon, in some time, Mr. Kaku is more qualified to make the prediction as to when. So, essentially, anything that you can build from memory can be built. Anything that can be built by storage of memory and access to memory and analysis of this memory and expression of this memory, everything that you're doing through your intellect and thinking that is you, can be done by a machine at some point. I'm not the expert to predict when, but definitely it can be done, there's no question about that. But there's another dimension of intelligence within the human being, which we refer to as chitta. What chitta means is, this is a dimension of intelligence where there is not an iota of memory, it is unsullied by memory. What this means is, see, memory is what has made you everything that you are. You have a human form, this is evolutionary memory. You have variety of other memories, that's what makes you a certain kind of person, and so many other things that you are. Your professions, your capabilities, your knowledge, everything is because of memory. But memory is also a defining boundary. The moment you identify with your memory, you say, oh, this is my friend, this one I do not know, this is a person I like, this is a person I don't like, this is all memory. Memory fixes a definition and a defined boundary to your life. What is me and what is you is just a question of memory, that I know this is me and this is you. But there is a dimension of intelligence which we call as chitta, or in modern terminology, loosely, it can be called as consciousness. Not being conscious as you and me are, this is wakefulness, this is not consciousness. So, this dimension of intelligence has no memory in it. Where there is no memory, there are no boundaries to it. You will not do that with a robot. Do what you want. Because everything that can be done by memory will be done. Right now, 90% or more of humanity lives by their intellect and their physiological and intellectual capabilities. These things can be built at some point and make them look very real. So, once machines start doing this, it is inevitable for you to explore the deeper dimensions of who you are. Right now, this has happened in a significant way. In, let's say, 100 years ago, if we want to be strong, if we want to be successful, we thought the best thing was to build, maybe 500 years ago, let us say, if you want to be a big man in the place, in your town, you had to have big muscles. Whoever had the big muscles was the big man, strong man there. But now if you have big muscles, we will give you a menial job. We don't recognize you. One reason why women have a equal space or reasonably equal space on the planet today is because of technology, because the power of the muscle has been neutralized. How much brain power do you have, how much intellectual power you have is deciding things right now. But if intellectual power is again, as muscle power was taken by the machines, if intellectual power is taken by the machines, naturally human beings will dig deeper into their consciousness. A machine
Hopefully.
cannot dig deeper, but everything that you can do, a machine can do in future, and that'll be a great day because that means we are on a holiday. We don't work for a living. Now, we look at life in a completely different way, which will be very, very significant. In fact, for the first time, we will become human beings. We must understand why we are called human beings. That means we are the only creatures on the planet who know how to be. As you were saying, a bug knows how to survive better than you. Without a social atmosphere, many of you will not know how to survive. A bug knows how to survive far better than you, better equipped than you. because he's just focused on his survival. But a bug will not know how to be conscious. You can definitely build a bug. It's very interesting that today in the computer technologies we are using these words, that's a bug, it's a virus, definitely. The dangers of this are also there, as the dangers of machines are there even today. For example, the automobiles are killing more people than wars. Every year after year, they're killing. But we have accepted that as collateral damage, it's part of the thing. We're traveling faster, so some people will die. We have come to terms with that. So similarly, maybe we'll have nano-soldiers. Soldiers won't be human beings going and fighting. We sit here and let loose on other people. At one phase it will happen. These things will be terrible, but even now it's terrible. You can just press a switch here and destroy a whole city somewhere else. It is quite terrible even now. So, before such capabilities come, or as they're coming, there is no such thing as before and after. As these capabilities are coming, we must also strive to upgrade the human being to move beyond the limitations of their intellect and come to a deeper dimension of intelligence, which is life itself,
Как?
the very source of life itself within us.
Как, гуру, как? Потому что показывают
How can this be done? As practice shows, and we're talking about technologies of the future, no technology, no technological breakthroughs, no technological evolution is changing human nature. Latest iPhones will never change the fact that people, have been killing each other over a piece of land. They're still doing the same. They're killing each other over a piece of land. How can we ensure that? How can we resolve this issue? Because technological improvements are not improving human beings. Maybe because the memory, ancestral memory, is so strong in us that we still remember how our ancestors were fighting over a piece of bread. Maybe we'll continue doing the same because of the memory we have.
Yeah, well, again, the answer that Sadhguru gave a long time ago: inner peace. Boom. That's it. Just move on to the next question after that. No, but he's gonna have to explain that for sure, especially to a lot of people who don't explore this topic. Inner peace. What do you mean by inner peace? And he talked about one of the problems, which is identities. Again, identities, it can be a very fascinating thing to learn about a human being, to learn where they're from, what their culture is like, what they did, what they eat and all that. But the problem with identities, or the good thing is to learn about them. The bad thing is when it starts being used against you. Like, oh, you're this culture, or you're this religion, or you're this person. That's the issue. It's not necessarily identities. It's just when we start using that as a weapon.
Say, the thing is, if anything needs to happen, a certain amount of human energy, time and resource has to be dedicated to it. For example, somebody was telling me, in 1860, when certain survey was done in United States, some kind of observation, probably studying dead bodies and stuff like that, the skeletal systems and things, they said in 1860, nearly 60% of the people would start losing their teeth at the age of 40. And in 1860, nearly 97% of United States was illiterate. But today, people have their teeth intact even if they're 90. And today, 100% is literate. How does this happen? Simply because we invested in what is called as schoolrooms and teachers and toothbrushes and mothers. We invested. If we did not invest, even today we would be losing our teeth, even today we would be illiterate. So, we have to invest in consciousness. Till now, we've been investing only in our survival. But once the technologies that they're talking about starts becoming a reality, which is already becoming, survival will not even be an issue. When survival is not an issue, we will definitely start investing, but the sooner we invest, with less aberration, we can move into these new possibilities. As Dr. Kaku said, it's always a double-edged sword. Which way are you going to use it depends on who you are, isn't it?
Like a tool again. Tool can be used for good or bad. Man, I had something to say, but I can't remember what it is now. But so let's continue on. Freaking hell.
So whether your identity and your experience is very exclusive or your identity and experience is very inclusive, this will determine which shape and in which way the sword will swing.
Спасибо большое. У нас есть время, что…
Thank you so much. We still have some time left for the questions from the audience. Does anybody have any questions? Members of the audience? No questions from the audience? No, there is one.
For your really fruitful visions shared with us. My name is Konstantin Sonkin. I'm CEO of a startup and a researcher in the field of neuroscience. And my question is to Micho. Dr. Kaku, please, you shared with us your long-term vision about neurocommunication and brain-computer interfaces. But may I ask you about like short-term goals for us, for developers, what to develop first of all to contribute to daily life of a large population of consumers to increase the level of life of humanity. Thank you.
Sounds like he's asking the question is how do I make more money, because that's the answer he's going to give is obviously supposedly good to make people's lives better, and you can make money off making lives better. But hey, you know,
ask a question,
make a life better, make a life better.
Short-term goals in terms of brain-computer interface. Well, first of all, in the United States, the driving force behind this technology is the Pentagon.
Money.
The Pentagon has given $150 million
There you go.
to create exoskeletons, to bypass the injured spinal cord of soldiers wounded in Afghanistan and Iraq, so that the human brain directly communicates with an artificial hand, an artificial leg, and can walk. And if you saw the World Cup soccer games 2 years ago in Sao Paulo, Brazil, the man who kicked the football, initiating the Sao Paulo games, was totally paralyzed. He was a quadriplegic. He could not walk. But at Duke University in North Carolina, they put a chip in his brain
gotta watch that.
hook him up to an exoskeleton, and he kicked the football. So the immediate gains is for people who are injured in football accidents, car accidents, injuries of the spinal cord, injuries in warfare, to create an artificial body controlled directly by the human brain. Now, my colleague Stephen Hawking, the physicist who died recently, lost control of his fingers and vocal cords, but he could still communicate. And how? Because his brain communicated with a chip, a radio in his glasses. That chip picked up radio from his brain, converted it to electricity to a laptop computer, and Stephen was able to think and write. So by thinking, he was able to write books and communicate with the outside world. So here's an immediate benefit for people who are paralyzed, their spinal cord is no longer functioning, they are disconnected from the world, and this will also make possible a brain chip for Alzheimer's patients, because we can now upload simple memories in mice and also in monkeys. Simple memories can now be put on the internet. This means that we want to create a brain pacemaker for Alzheimer's patients so that memories can come flooding into their brain. And the Pentagon, again, recently gave $50 million to create a memory chip for soldiers, but also for Alzheimer's patients. And so here we have an immediate market for people who are afflicted with injuries spinal cord injuries, as well as the aging process, to allow them to bypass the spinal cord, to access memories that they've lost. And here is a market for companies that can utilize this to make money, to create products to alleviate human suffering.
Пожалуйста.
Thank you so much. I have a question to Sadhguru. I'm very much interested in your point of view. Do you think a man can change his destiny in this life by taking certain steps, or do you think all his steps, whatever he does in his life, are related to other lives that would follow and his transformations? In other words, can a person, or should a person, try to change his destiny now, or his destiny is preset, and whatever he does in this life will only affect his future lives?
I will say everything that you do now will always have an effect in the future, whether you believe in reincarnation or whatever. I was actually thinking about this I think earlier today about the butterfly effect. How the flap of a wing of a butterfly, it flapped twice instead of once one day, and that secondary flap pushed a tree seed. As opposed to the tree seed going straight down from underneath the tree and dying, it floated away because of that secondary flap. That little bit of flap of gust of wind pushed that tree seed over a fence and then landed and grew into a big tree. 200 years later, that tree has grown so big, a massive hurricane came in, toppled the tree over and landed on top of someone's house and ended up killing someone. But that someone, had that tree not been there, would have grown up to be a dictator and destroyed the world. But because of that secondary flap of the butterfly wings, it changed the outcome of the world. So basically, whatever you do now will have an effect on the future, no matter maybe even how mundane it may be. Talking to someone alone can make a big difference. So if you believe in reincarnation, then what you do now will affect you in the afterlife. Absolutely. Karma. And then whether you do or do not, whatever you do now will still affect people in the future. Whatever you create, however you interact with people, every time we interact with each other or anytime we do something in the physical world, we will be making changes to the future. That's my thoughts.
What generally people are calling as destiny is
Karma?
what they largely create unconsciously. Whatever we do unconsciously, we can also do it consciously. If you can move your hand unconsciously, you can also move it consciously. So similarly, if you're creating your life unconsciously, you can also create it consciously. If you create something consciously, of course, you would make it the way you want it. So, destiny means a largely unconscious accumulations taking shape and taking their own tendencies and leading you on.
I'm sorry. I forgot to add destinies into my explanation. I don't believe in destinies. You can shape the life. You have absolute, like, I think Sadhguru has said this. Yes, he did. You have absolute control over your life. You don't have control of whatever other people but you have absolute control over your life. There's nothing preset in your life. You can do whatever you want that you're capable of doing. You have to understand there's still limitation, obviously. You can't go fly a spaceship if you don't know how to fly a spaceship, you don't have enough money, or you don't work for the company that will allow you to fly in a spaceship. You have to realize the limitations that you have, but you are capable of doing whatever that you want that you're capable of doing.
You can make a conscious destiny. When you fail to make a conscious destiny, then generally it gets referred to as fate.
Yeah.
Fixed destiny.
I didn't have control over this.
Is your destiny fixed? Definitely not. Otherwise, why all this effort? If everything is fixed, why you and me should live? We could die at our birth and just fine, isn't it? It's definitely in your hands. Whether you take it into your hands or not is always the question, it's an individual question.
Abdul, entrepreneur, I have a question to distinguish Sadhguru. My question is as follows. When you said that we need to invest in as much into consciousness as much as in technology, so that consciousness becomes an island where humanity can preserve itself in the light of the development of robots, that's an island where we can still feel like human beings. So my question is, today there are lots of infrastructures to invest into technologies. There are startups, there are investment funds, numerous scientists that are developing different solutions. How can we address the issue of investing into consciousness or self-consciousness? What needs to be done? What infrastructure is there in place? What solutions are there to do that?
Sadhguru has created an infrastructure called Inner Engineering, and also he holds online courses. I hope he's going to talk about that. And I wonder if he has other foundations around the world, like in Russia and in the UK or Europe in general, in Africa. There is one in the United States, and I want to go see it. I want to go there. I just don't have the time. I need to make time.
Thank you.
I would like to correct the question a little bit before I address the question. You used the analogy of an island. No, I want you to understand, human intellect is an island. All products of human intellect are small islands, including technology. Consciousness is the ocean in which we are existing. What consciousness means is an intelligence not identified with any memory, that means not identified with any boundary of you and me and this and that. See, you must understand this. On this planet, let's think of planet, but even the planet can be thought further. In this space, suddenly systems have happened, stars have happened, planets have happened. In that planet, life has happened. All of it fundamentally from an intelligence beyond this material that you're seeing as creation. All of it emerging from almost nothingness. It is in a way nothingness, but you must understand the word nothing by putting a hyphen between no and thing. It's not a thing because it is not a memory block. A memory block is a thing because it comes with a boundary. Once there is a defined boundary, it becomes physical existence. This is a dimension of intelligence which has no boundaries. So that is the ocean. You're mistaking the island for an ocean and an ocean for an island. So what do we have to do for it to manifest in human society is large scale. In every generation of people, there have been very conscious beings, but in some generations and in some societies, they have been heard. In other societies, they have been ignored. The other noise has been much bigger. So it is time we make that voice which refers to a dimensionless, a boundaryless consciousness heard. And methodologies as to how to become conscious, as there are technologies to create well-being in our surroundings, there is a science and technology to do the same within us. So, this is not today's thing, this has always been there, it's as old as humanity. But in some generations it is heard loudly, in some generations it sinks, and accordingly human well-being rises and sinks. Any amount of technology, if you don't know how to be, you still are not well. See, look at our own state right now. As a generation of people, we know more comfort and convenience than any generation ever knew in the history of humanity. Our life is far more comfortable. No generation ever knew these kind of comforts and conveniences. But can you claim you are the most joyful and fantastic generation ever? No. People are becoming neurotic. I'm not saying we're worse than other generations, but
we're not
we
the
are
best.
not significantly better for the amount of toll we have taken on every other life to have what we want to have. So, your technologies will bring comfort and convenience, will not bring well-being. It's time to focus on that, because already we are at a place where technology is going through the ceiling, we are not matching up. It is like, right now, your well-being is still determined by what's around you, not what's within you. So this doesn't mean love thy neighbor, be like this, go be a good person, be a noble person, this is not about that. Your body and your brain should take instructions from you. If your body and your brain take instructions from you, would you keep yourself healthy and blissful every moment of your life? I'm asking you. If you had a choice, definitely you would. So obviously your body and your brain is not taking instructions from you. This means you're not conscious enough. So we have to invest in that direction. One thing is, if you walk through this city, I'm sure there are hospitals, there are schools, there are toilets and there is everything. But do you have a place where there is a place for people to meditate? There's no such thing. Eastern societies invested heavily in the past in that direction, but today they are also emulating the West and trying to compete with them, losing out on this. But the need for inner well-being will become very strong in the next 20–25 years when technology starts doing most of the things that you're doing and you don't know why you exist.
That's what I was talking about, you know, some people just need something to do, they need a job or something, they just can't be happy for themselves. And it's kind of funny though, his example about how we are the most comfortable that we've ever been in human civilization, but yet somehow our well-being has not gotten any better. That is an amazing example to show someone that, yeah, we have all the conveniences in the world in a sense, but yet our inner well-being is just, it's still the same, it's not better. I have a feeling in the past it's been better in certain aspects, certain time frames and stuff, and of course worse in others. But yeah, our well-being, inner well-being, is just, it's not good, even though we have all the comforts in the world and we're not fighting survival anymore.
Then the need for well-being becomes super strong. So if we want to be ready for that day, it's very important that we invest both physical infrastructure and human infrastructure, which focuses on the innermost core of who we are.
Позвольте, я задам последний вопрос, адресован вам, господин Каку. Я очень…
Mr. Kakum, let me ask you a question. For quite a while, I used to think that technological and communication progress leads to a total solitude of a human. Yes, people can connect via FaceTime, but they become more and more isolated from each other and inward focused. Somebody has mentioned those dolls, and fantasy about what to do with those dolls. But the problem is that people may no longer need each other when the technologies develop. Will it happen? What do you think?
I will say human beings are social animals. We will still communicate in a sense of like through the internet or whatever, or through text, chat rooms, or what do you call those things, like not storyboards, but oh god, the websites where you can read people's comments. Not YouTube, but I forgot what the other one was. We will still interact with each other, but I guess maybe she's talking about once AI robots have developed into where you can communicate with them. I have a feeling we would isolate ourselves. Now thinking about that, I mean, will be some people out there who understand that they want to have a human connection and is willing to put up with the frustrations of having friends that doesn't 100% completely agree with you. Because a robot can be programmed in any way that you want. It will be 100% agreeable with you. Who will think and do things that you want and like. But I have a feeling the people who want a real human connection is going to be a dying breed at that point.
100 years ago, when the telephone was first coming in, there were many articles denouncing the telephone. The telephone, they said, was impersonal. We will spend too much time talking to this mechanical voice in the air rather than talking to our children and talking to our loved ones. And so they said the telephone is evil. Well, the critics were right. We spend too much time on the telephone. We don't talk to our children enough. But the telephone, we love it. We love the telephone because it expanded our horizon from 20 people to 2,000 people.
The problem with that, though, is that I heard like I think someone have said, and I think it might be a scientific study, that you can only really know about up to 5 people, like really know them, and then you can only have acquaintances up to 20 people. Any more than that, you don't have enough time in a day to invest as much time on everyone. Either you're going to have a lot of acquaintances and no real good friends, or you're going to have a really good friend but not very many acquaintances, because of the amount of time needed to spend with getting to know someone and time with them. So yeah, you may know 2,000 people, but do you really know them versus 20 people?
And now mothers come up to me and say their children spend too much time on the internet. What should they do? Well, personally, I think that a new etiquette is being created for children. If you are a child and you're not on the internet, then you don't exist. A new social etiquette is being created. So I tell mothers that it's a good thing if their child is on the internet, otherwise they'll be an outcast, but they have to be socialized. And that's the key to the whole puzzle. We want to make sure that our people are socialized, that they interact with real people in real time, make friends, make alliances, and engage in social discourse so that they can function on several levels. On one level, they can function in cyberspace because a new social etiquette is being created. And on the other hand, they can interact with people socially in terms of understanding pecking order, etiquette, politeness, deference to our elders, how to make friends, how to make coalitions. All these things are very complicated, and we have to make sure that our children understand that as well. And so the internet does not have to be an isolated island divorced from the rest of society. If anything, it'll expand your horizon from 2,000 people to 2 billion people.
Again, it's a matter of how much you know those persons, and eventually, I have a feeling that, I don't know if anyone else noticed, but a lot of people, when they're out and about, they're just like this. Okay, let me. No, they're like this, walking and eating, and then going to their room. It's kind of funny. There was a picture that was drawn about. I guess it was a picture of, like, it wasn't really well defined, but they're people, and they see the face being sucked into the phone. It's creepy, but at the same time, it's very much real.
And so I think that we have to make sure that our children are socialized and take advantage of the internet, because the internet, as I mentioned before, promotes democracy. And as I concluded before, democracies rarely war against other democracies. So when your child plays video games with somebody from Norway, Mexico, or Afghanistan, that is a good thing, because in the future they may not want to war with people from these other countries.
He clearly hasn't been playing on, like, toxic games where people are just being racial and all of this toxic stuff.
Because they are their best friends. So what I'm trying to say is a new social etiquette is being created.
I wouldn't
we have
disagree
to
with
make
that.
sure that we don't hide in it, but on the other hand, we have to use it, because that's where jobs, opportunity, and new friends are going to be created.
Спасибо
say
большое.
something? Can I just say one thing?
Of course.
I think this fear about technology is just fear about the unknown for most human beings. Everything that is new, that comes in, of course, there will be a certain challenge of exerting ourselves to understand what it is. It will definitely not create solitude. The problem should be more of, there will be no room for solitude. That will be the question because we'll be too much connected. People wake up in the morning and the first thing they see is their cell phone. What are the messages they have? It's fine, because the gadget is new. I think the next generation will learn how to handle the cell phone far better than the way we are handling it because this is a new gadget, we're a little excited about it. I'm sure people will come to terms with this.
I don't know. I just noticed that people aren't like… I mean, we are getting to know a lot more people, that's for sure, but again, how much of that people do you know, how much of that person do you know? Because you don't spend time with them. I mean, a lot of time with them. How can you divide 24 hours into 2,000 people? You can't. You don't really get a chance to know people. And then if it's all just strictly online, sometimes people will not know how to interact with each other when you get to meet in person. I could only imagine, it's like, let's meet in person. Okay, they meet in person. How are you doing? Oh, you're doing good. I'm doing good too. You know, they're literally in front of each other, but they're still communicating through the phone, maybe. I don't know. It's true. We don't know for sure what's going to happen, but the trend that I'm seeing, again, purely in my opinion, is that we are getting a bit more isolated as technology gets better. I mean, maybe we can see each other's faces on the phones, but nonetheless, though, is that we're not seeing each other person to person anymore. A lot of people are staying in their houses and doing it via the internet. I mean, no doubt, new etiquette for sure. It may be the new way of doing things. I don't know, but it seems like it is a bit isolating. But and what Sadhguru was talking about, how everything there's no personal life anymore because everything's on the internet. There's cameras everywhere. Yeah, it's gonna be a scary thing too. It's not the kind of socializing that you want to do, you know.
Спасибо. Последний вопрос из зала, пожалуйста.
Okay, last question from the floor. A very simple question. I want to ask both Kako-san and Sadhguru.
Sakura.
We are now in a situation of unprecedented uncertainty. The God has rolled the dice. And we know that the memories which we have discussed, that electricity generates waves and makes the heart beat. And when the heart no longer beats, the person is dead. And memory is also an archive of memories, experiences. So what should we do? Forget everything, because the system is glitching. So we'd have to reboot it. Can I ask you for a very short answer, please?
You mentioned that we have constant uncertainty, but I personally think that's a good thing. It's a good thing because new jobs, new exciting occupations, new challenges for humanity is being created. Now, I'm generally an optimist. Why? Because I think the smallest unit of history is the decade. Anything smaller than a decade, you get random noise. And therefore, when we look at the random noise, it looks frightening. Every day, a new emergency, a new crisis. But when you look at history decade by decade, then you begin to realize the enormous progress. And that came through to me every time I talked to my parents and my grandparents. Think of the world that our grandparents lived in, where high-speed travel was getting stuck in the mud when it rained, long-distance communication was yelling out the window, and a good long life meant that you lived to be 45 years of age. That's the way it was for our grandparents. So I tend to be optimistic when you look at decade by decade. You realize that all the uncertainties you talk about are fluctuations within the decade.
Дмитрий, добавьте, что вы хотели от себя добавить.
Dmitry, would you like to add anything? One, you know the dice have been rolled, but whether to forget or to remember everything
The dice will always be rolled.
is difficult to say.
Пожалуйста.
Sadhguru, a very short answer, please. Your last comment.
See, we are complaining about too many possibilities. You must understand, in the past, uncertainty meant whether you live tomorrow or not. Today, your life is largely assured. Uncertainty is only in terms of possibilities and new happenings. You must celebrate this, not worry about it.
Agreed.
Because in the past it was always about war, it's about punishment, somebody's going to hang you, somebody's going to kill you. It's no more like that. There is a proper process for all those things. By accident, nobody can simply kill you or hang you or do things to you. Now it is only about possibilities. Uncertainty of possibilities is a fantastic situation. We shouldn't even ever complain about it.
Спасибо. Дмитрий Медников, хотите ли вы буквально 2 слова добавить?
Dmitry, just 2 words and we'll be closing this session. Well, that's a very philosophic question, you know. Somebody asked me about what the media would look like in 80 years from now. I thought about that. And I think that it will be something like selecting your role, emotional behavior model at any point in time, the one that you like best.
What?
Okay, thank you so much. I want to thank all our speakers.
Okay, I'm gonna end right there because I went over time trying to cram this. I talked so much in the first one. Alright, that's my reaction to Technologies of the Future, Sadhguru and Michio Kaku 2018, live from Russia. If you like my content, please consider subscribing, thumbs up, thumbs down, and bell. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.